Hello, everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel called Living in Hayward, Wisconsin, where we talk about all things real estate related and also just about living in Hayward. We cover topics like where's the best fish fry, we talk about market trends, we talk about what lake should I buy property on in Hayward. There's tours of Main Street and tons of other information. I have a video about old fashioned, so check out my library of videos. I think I have 50 plus videos on there now from the last year and a half, so feel free to like, subscribe, share my channel. I'm Audrey Miller. I'm the broker owner of Northwest Wisconsin Realty Team, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the data from the sales in the first half of 2025, since we're now past the June 30th mark and well into our selling season. We're going to talk about whether the market is shifting or not. Is it cooling down? Is it not? There's a lot of talk in the world and in the country about the real estate market. So I want to give you the down low and the snapshot on what is happening in and around the area that I cover, which is Hayward, Wisconsin, in about 45 minutes to an hour in any direction from there, but primarily focused on Sawyer County in this video. So I hope this is super helpful, whether you're buying or selling. It may have some information that can guide you in your choices. And as always, if you're looking for an agent in the Hayward area or just have general questions or you want to sell or buy, feel free to reach out to me. I specialize in listings. I specialize in lakefront and residential properties with acreage. So I would be happy to help you. And let's dive into this information that we have for you today. So let's talk some numbers and data first, and then I'm going to follow that up with kind of my perspective on what the market is doing these days out in the field every day, working with buyers and sellers, and also some specific advice if you're a buyer or if you're a seller, how to approach this current market. And I would say the year of 2025 has been changing. So even as agents, we are learning as we go what is going on in the real estate market. It's been a little bit up and down. There's been some trends for sure, but there's also been some surprises on what's selling and what's not. So we are kind of also learning as we go throughout the year and then advising clients appropriately. So who knows, in 3 months, it may be different, but we can only talk about what has happened so far this year and what our current conditions are in the market. And I'll give you some comparisons between 2024 and 2025, and even going back to 2023 with some information on market trends. The overall picture is that we have been in a steady market, but I'm going to, like I said, give a little more info on specifics, regarding this once I go through the data with you. So starting with number of homes that are available. So the inventory levels, and this is just Sawyer County. I also do a lot of work in Washburn County. But Washburn County tends to mirror Sawyer. So I just typically stick with Sawyer County. Hayward is solidly in Sawyer County, and the areas, a lot of the premier lakes are in Sawyer County, some of them in Washburn. But the information I'm giving you on Sawyer can largely be translated to Washburn County as well, and probably even Bayfield to the north of us. So number of properties has definitely increased as far as what is available on the market as of the half year mark of, midsummer of 2025 versus 2024 or 2023. So right now we have 210 properties that are on the market in Sawyer County, residential lakefront, not vacant land. That's a separate discussion. This is just about properties with a structure, cabin, home on them. So 210 properties that are on the market, and of those, 64 are under contract. So that is 30% of the inventory that we have on the market is under contract. The rest is available. Now compare this to 2024 at the same time when we had 141 properties available and 44 were under contract. The percentages under contract is almost identical. 31% under contract last year, 30% under contract this year. The difference is the number of properties that is available is up by almost a third, basically a third more properties that are available. So thankfully buyers are getting to have a few more to choose from, which in turn kind of gives you a little bit more leverage in certain situations. There's still pretty sparse amount to choose from, but that's a pretty big increase year over year in number of properties that are on the market. I think that's very good news for buyers. The next metric I want to discuss is how many properties sold in the year to date. So again, first half of the year. So in 2024, in the first part of the year, we had sold 134 properties, and that was an increase of 15% over 2023 when we sold even less. So 2024 total sold in the first half year, 134 properties. This particular metric has remained largely unchanged. In terms of sold in 2025, there were 127 properties sold. So that's a change of about 5 to 6% less that sold, but that is a very negligible difference. So essentially similar amount of properties sold. The next metric I would like to talk about is days on market or sold properties. How long were they on the market? And this goes, again, like I've said before, this goes from the date that they hit the market until when they closed. So in that time frame, of course, is the loan process, if there's a lender involved, title work, all of those things. things. So you got to kind of subtract out maybe approximately 45 days for that whole process typically. Cash offers sometimes quicker. But so from the time they hit the market till they sold in 2024 last year, that was 94 days, which was in contrast to 100 days in 2023. So we actually had less days on market last year than we did the year before by just a few. And now this year, that time frame is 103 days. So we're really, again, not much of a difference. We're up total a week for time on market. These are still very low numbers in terms of what is selling. But what you have to keep in mind is that some of the properties that aren't selling as the year goes on may raise that number. This is only for properties that sold, but some of those were on the market for maybe 3-4 months. Some of them were on the market in a matter of days. So the average, this is obviously an average, is 103 days on market. So again, stretching up a tiny bit from last year to maybe give buyers like a little bit longer time to get to a property. And then the other really interesting thing is the price points, obviously. So in 2024, and I'm kind of just doing this 2024, then 2023 and 2025 to kind of give you the contrast. So the average sales price in 2024 in Sawyer County for all residential properties on and off water was $382,600. Okay, so roughly $383,000. In 2023, that was actually $402,000. So we saw a drop of about 5% between 2023, and prices actually came down just a bit in 2024. In 2025, the average sale price when I look at the entire Sawyer County is $423,000, up from $383,000. That would be about a 10% increase from 2024 to 2025. However, I think that number is skewed. So I ran another metric because what I'm experiencing in the field on a daily basis is that prices are actually ticking down a little bit. Because we have a small sampling of properties, it's not a big number. You know, we've only sold 127 properties this whole year. There happened to be a higher concentration of the luxury properties or the ones that were over $1 million in 2025 versus 2024. And this was not necessarily because of a market increase. It just happened to be that in 2025, I think there were like 9 properties that sold over $1 million. In 2024, in the first half of the year, there were only like 2. So my intuition was that this number showing a 10% increase year over year in price point was not correct. So I reran the data, just taking everything 1 million and under and taking out those kind of upper end ones that were skewing the numbers a bit, in my opinion. And that result showed a 9 or 10% decrease year over year in average price from 2024 to 2025. That prices are trending down a little bit, close to 10% as a rule of thumb. Maybe the data will look a little different once we get the entire year of 2025 in front of us, but this is for the first half of the year. There'll be more data as time goes on, and I will do another probably quarterly update and then an end of year analysis as well. So the average percent of sale price, now let me think how to say that differently. So you have list price and then you have what it's sold for, and there's a percentage of difference between those two. So in 2023, the percent of list price versus actual sale price was 98%. So if a property was listed for $100,000, it sold for $98,000. If it was listed for $300,000, it would have sold for only 2% less than that. Whereas in 2025, we are now at 95.7% of list price. So that shows you that buyers are able to negotiate a little bit more, maybe to the tune of a few percent more. Plus, you have to take into account that 95.7% of list price is the most recent list price, not the original list price. So let's say somebody listed at 400, they dropped it to 375, and then it sold for 95% of that number, not of the original. So there's definitely a trend where buyers are having a little more room to negotiate, not a lot, but a little bit more. And this is just one other interesting piece of data. The average home size is still right around that 1,600 square foot mark, which is kind of similar to what we had in the past. We have a lot of small cabins and condo cabins on lakes that tend to bring that average down a little bit. And then we obviously have a lot of standard family homes, larger lake homes, but the average is around 1,600 square feet. And the average beds and baths is 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, which I know is a kind of a typical size. So that is still the averages in terms of the homes themselves that are selling. So now to get into a little bit, I guess my perspective or my advice, if you're a seller or buyer, what I would advise you in this current market we're in. This is July of 2025 right now. So from here, kind of the foreseeable future, I think, obviously if it changes a lot, I'll, advise people differently. But right now, if you are a seller, this is what I would say to you. You cannot expect to pull comps from 2023, 2024, and take those numbers and then increase that beyond what the comps show. We're just not in that market. The buyer pool is smaller. The interest rates have remained higher, right around that 7% mark. And the buyer pool has shrunk to where buyers are a little more picky. They're sometimes taking a little bit longer to make decisions, and they're ruling out properties that are, 1, either overpriced, or 2, have some kind of issue that they have to overcome. Back in 2021, 2022, especially in those years, every property was selling. No matter, say it had higher elevation, people would just buy it. Let's say it had some work that needed to be done. It was just gone. Everything was selling because the buyer pool was so huge. But after the interest rates ticked up. There's things going on in the economy, in the world in general. There's the whole tariff situation that's been going on all year. Some unrest in various ways. Stock market has been a little more volatile in 2025. So these things are causing the buyer pool to be smaller. I would definitely say it's still a seller's market, but here's what you have to know as a seller if you're listing in 2025. You have to be realistic about your price point. You have to price it appropriately. You can't take comps that your agent gives you and go, okay, I want to tack on an extra 5% or 10% above that. It will almost surely backfire on you. And I wish that sellers would just trust me on this. Most of them do, some don't. And then we sit there doing price reductions later. Agents don't say this because they're trying to make a quick sale or because they don't want you to get the most money for your property. Experienced agents will tell you this because they know that pricing appropriately actually does get you the most money for your property and sells it the quickest for you. And yes, I know it's not an exact science of what you should list your property for, but as long as you have solid comps to go off of and an experienced agent that you're working with, you can get really dang close. And if you want to hire an appraiser and have them do that same process, kind of similar to what an agent does, and you want to spend that extra money, you can do that as well to kind of hone in on a price. But what I would recommend to a seller right now is that you look at the comps and you go 5% under the comps, because the properties that are really attracting the interest, getting multiple offers and selling quickly, sometimes going over full asking, are the people who are being realistic about the price point and are willing to start on maybe the slightly lower end of the past year and a half comps. And then buyers are flocking to those properties. You end up sometimes getting more than what you even are asking or maybe what you expected. Not always. You have to have a property that's desirable to a good group of buyers. But I have been in situations recently where we've had multiple offers quite often. In fact, I'm right in the middle of negotiations on one of my listings at the moment. We're ending up with 3 offers. It's definitely going to go over full asking price. I was just on the buyer side on a situation a week ago. There were multiple offers. My buyers were cash. They offered full price. We still lost out. And I just went under, just closed on another one where we went over full asking price. Conversely, I have also been in situations where on the listing side, we've had to negotiate a decent amount with the buyer and lower the price. I've had to do price reductions on other listings. So this year has been kind of a mixed bag where properties go, but it has so much to do with where you start out, and a reasonable, appropriate starting point is more important than ever in the current market condition. That's probably the thing that I could say the most. Obviously, in the end, it's a seller's choice what they want to list for. I can give recommendations. I can point you in the right direction. I have a very, very good grasp of the market knowledge, what buyers are looking for, the things that go into the components of pricing a property. So it's super important to hire a local, experienced agent to help you with that process, especially in the environment that we're in right now. And then anything you can do, this is always true, but especially in this market, anything you can do to get your property ready to sell, as move-in ready as possible, little projects that need to be done. I can always give you advice on that, but it's best to do those things as well. And definitely still a seller's market, so do not be discouraged, but I always find it interesting. No seller is complaining when their prices have been escalating rapidly, but as they're starting to go down a little bit or they have to negotiate more, sellers want to cling to the prices that were in effect and the market we were in a few years ago because, well, my neighbor's house sold for this, or I heard this, or I heard that, or a friend told me XYZ. But maybe you say to yourself, okay, I just gained equity of 50 to 60% in my property if you bought it, say, in 2019 or earlier. I may have to give up 5% of that to sell my property now. That's still one heck of an investment over a period of time. So great ROI. Even if you have to go slightly on the lower end of the comps right now. So that's my advice for sellers in this market we're in 2025. Now, for you buyers, my advice for you is this. First of all, don't think that because things have, our days on market have extended a few days or a week longer, you can negotiate a little bit more. Don't think that you have all the time in the world to get to a property. If you are a buyer who is looking to buy in 2025 and you see a place or your agent notifies you or you see something online and you think it'd be a great fit for you, it would be best to get here as soon as possible. A lot of times in the first weekend or for sure in the first week, depending on the property. So that's one piece of advice. This is not a sit back and wait kind of market and think that, oh, that's overpriced a little bit. I'm going to put in a lowball offer or I'm going to wait and see. If you want the property, you're going to have to come and get it. If you feel like it's too much, then you can wait. If it's still on the market in 2 or 3 weeks, give it a try then to negotiate. But you likely, if you feel it's priced appropriately and your agent feels it's priced appropriately, it's a property that's, something that a lot of buyers are looking for, desirable comparable to a lot of buyers, very good chance it will sell in 4 to 10 days. So that's still the market that we're in. Now there's a lot of properties that are taking 3 to 4 weeks to sell. Some are taking 3 to 4 months to sell. So you got to kind of look at where is your price point? What are you willing to spend? What are you looking for? How motivated are you to find something? And then if you're going to try to come in 5% or 10% under, you have to just let it sit for a little bit. The sellers are typically not going to accept an offer in the first week that is significantly less than full asking because they haven't had enough time to test the market. And if it's been a little longer, then yes, there are definitely buyers I've been working with who have gotten properties probably for up to 10% under full asking, which can be a significant number if you're looking, 800,000, 900,000, 1.2 million, 1.4 million. There's definitely been negotiations happening. I think almost more so on the higher end properties than on the lower priced properties. So you do have more negotiating power in 2025 than you did. You do have a chance of possibly spending slightly less on a property, but our trend has been so gradual in terms of price point, and depending which data you look at, you could even say that it's up a little bit. I think it's down a little just from what I'm seeing, but it's not a huge percentage. Do I think it's going to continue to trend downward through 2025 and 2026? Maybe a little bit. Time will tell. I feel like my crystal ball has kind of been shattered. I did a prediction earlier this year. I think I'm fairly on track with my predictions so far, but we'll see what the rest of 2025 brings. My advice to you is you still need to come in with a strong offer. If there's multiples, which are still very common, don't be surprised by that. You may have to submit a highest and best. And if sellers take the advice of pricing appropriately, then you're going to have less leverage. The properties where you're going to probably have more leverage as a buyer are the ones where they started out overpriced, they sat on the market, now they're dropping, they're getting more motivated. Length of time on market is your biggest indicator typically of how motivated the seller might be. It's not always true. Some sellers will sit on the market, they're not motivated, doesn't really matter, they don't need to sell. But a lot of people, when they've taken the step to put it on the market, they are interested in selling. So those are the things to watch, and the other thing that I think is really important for buyers, and a mistake that I see buyers make a lot, they take the list price as being the gospel truth of what the property is worth. I always tell buyers, you have to first decide, is this property listed too high, too low? Is it listed appropriately? If it's listed too low, going over full asking by even 20% or 15%, let's say it's listed for $350, maybe it should have been $375. Well, now maybe we could go to $395 and still be in the ballpark, or $380. But you got to first determine where the price point should be on the continuum of appropriate, low, or high, and then maybe decide. This is more in multiple offer situations that I'm talking about. And again, an experienced agent can run comps for you, give you an idea of where the property, should have been priced in their opinion, and you can go from there. Because sometimes, let's say on a $750,000 house, going $50,000 over might not even be enough if it should have maybe been priced closer to $8 to begin with. What I am seeing on the buyer side is the properties that seem to be selling the quickest are the tier 1 lakes where the price is under $1 million. So in that 800 to 900 range, but on the lakes that a lot of people want to be on, those properties are, I will say, kind of flying off the shelves for the most part. I think the 1.3 million and above is slower in 2025. The other niche that I think is selling pretty quickly, a very nice residential property with some acreage in the country around the Hayward area somewhere. And then also kind of the more affordable lakefront properties in the 350 to 450 range, where they might have, nice elevation to the water. They are a starter cabin on a nice lake, good swimmable frontage, but a smaller lake, but an entry point for price that is appealing to more buyers or affordable to more buyers. But yeah, it's every situation is different. That's one of the things I love about real estate. You're always growing, learning, challenging yourself, advising people, helping people. I'm very passionate about real estate. Maybe you can tell from watching my videos. But anyway, and I appreciate all of you who follow along. I get feedback sometimes that this has been helpful, that you like the videos. I am always very happy to hear that. If you have any constructive criticism, feel free to pass that along as well. Contact me anytime. Reach out to discuss property in the area. I would love to list your property for you if you're looking for a listing agent. I have extensive lake knowledge and I'd love to help you find something to buy as well. So anyway, I think that wraps it up for today. This got a little bit long, but hopefully you found it to be helpful, and maybe we can work together in the future sometime soon. Thank you very much.